Are you looking for some tips on how to care for these little guys? In this video, I'm gonna show you how to take care of your worms and what to feed it. Hello gardeners, this is Jeremy Stark here from Green Thumb Gardener, here to give you some tips, tutorials, and reviews for all your gardening needs. In today's video, I'm gonna show you a very simple way on how to care for your worm farm. Hopefully by now you've actually gone out and you maybe had to purchase a container to put your worms in, or you might have built an actual container for this. You need to know how to take care of them too. It's very simple, and I'll show you the exact way that I take care of them. And I've had worms for, gosh, I don't know, I think 4 or 5 years now. And I haven't had any problems with any of them. So I'll go over the very basic steps on what you need to do to take care of them, as far as feeding them, as far as kind of keeping them together, maybe what to do with them during the winter time as well. Before we get started though, if you could, please give us a green thumbs up. Let us know that we're making great videos for you and that you find this content helpful. Also, if you could, hit that subscribe button down below that you get notified of any videos that we do have. And make sure you hit that bell too. I think that will actually give you all those notifications. Also, we do have a website, and it's right down in the description below. And that website actually has all of our materials. So now that we got that out of the way, let's get right into it. All right, so by now you've managed to score some worms. Maybe you made a bin or you bought some bin online. If you haven't actually bought a bin, or if you're looking to actually buy this, you came through and saw that you wanted to get a worm bin, you wanted to see what's involved in it. I actually do have a tutorial on actually how to build your own worm bin from a Rubbermaid container. Really simple build. It's not really too much to it, but I'll put a link in the top up there so you can check out that video if you want. But now that you have your bin and you've secured your worms, you want to make sure that you're taking care of the worms so that they're going to survive throughout the years. This particular batch, I've had this batch for I think about 4 or 5 years now. I got it from Uncle Jim's Worm Farm. Great place to get worms if you haven't got them. You know, I'll put a link in the show notes below as well for that. But all you really need to do is, once you get the worms and you get them in here, you're going to start feeding them like a little bit of scraps at a time. You don't want to overload them with too much stuff as they're just kind of getting settled. They've been maybe transported. But once you get your bin established, some of the things that you're going to want to put into your bin is just, you want to save your vegetable scraps. And I'm talking about, like, vegetables and fruit. Pretty much any kind of vegetable and fruit. I would stick away from like garlics and onions. I still add a little bit in there, but I just try not to get too much, as well as the citrus stuff. They just don't seem to really care for that as much. If you put a little bit in there, it's fine. But I put coffee grounds. I even leave the coffee filter in there. As you can see, I got lots of different scraps in here. So what I like to do is, if the worms are in kind of one area of your bin, what I like to do is, the other material that you want to have is some type of shredded material. It really works really well. I just shred up all my stuff. I try not to put anything, obviously no plastic or anything, just regular paper. You can also get newspaper. You can shred that up. That works really well, as when I do as well sometimes. But you want to have it so that it's kind of this is the brown material that's going to use to mix with it, and also it's going to keep the odor down when you put the food scraps in there, especially during the summertime. It's going to get, it might get a little bit odor in there. So what I generally do is I try to keep everybody in one corner as I'm making it. Now the bins that I have like a multi-level bin, so I just kind of throw everything in there. But if you just have one little level bin and you have a cover on top with some, small little holes on the side, it's kind of all you really need. But here's what you can do is you just kind of move aside the worms here, and you can see them. The worms are kind of collected over here. And what I like to do is I like to just put the food scraps in one small area of the bin. And what will happen is they'll be working on this, and then eventually, once the food's all done, they're going to migrate over it. So I just generally take the whole thing like this, and I dump the whole thing in here. Get it all in there. So as you can see, it's just basically all the food, and the worms are underneath the shredded paper. And then what I do is I put the actual shredded paper on top of it. And I go pretty heavy with the shredded paper. I don't really mind being too I don't get too cheap with it. But you definitely want to have that in there because you want to have it covering everything, and eventually it's going to, you know, basically break down as well, and it's going to be part of your compost. So really that's it for just feeding your actual worms. There's really not much to it. I try to keep the bin, and I do keep it outside during the, you know, the warmer months, you know, spring, all the way up to pretty much the winter time. Around here in North Carolina, it does freeze during the winter. It's really just like a month or two that it does get pretty cold. So what I do is I have kept them outside, and I kind of put a blanket over it, something to just kind of keep it so that they all huddle up and they still survive, you know, even if there's a freeze. But sometimes I'll bring them into my garage if I know it's at a really extended period of time. So I try to keep it close to where I can bring it into the garage, at least to give it a little bit more covering. But even so, I basically, during the winter, I just kind of keep them together, and you know, maybe I might put some leaves over it or something to cover it so that it's a little bit warmer than what it is. But they generally survive a lot of freezing, but I can't really attest to, if you live up north, because I used to live in Boston, if it's going to survive those type of winters up there. I'm sure somebody else will be able to tell you that in the comments below. And then in the summertime, I try to keep this stuff as close as I can to the garden because I'm always going in and grabbing it. Now, you might ask, when do you actually get to harvest this stuff? So depending on what type of bin you have, you might have a bin that's a multi-level one. So what I do is, in this case, I have a multi-level one, is I'll start filling up the bottom bin, and then when it kind of gets to a certain level where it's full, then I'll stop putting food scraps in that, and I'll take this bin, and it's basically a new bin, and it has holes in the bottom, so I put it so it's pressing up against the existing compost there, and then I start putting the food scraps in that section. Eventually the worms will actually migrate up to the new food source once the other food source is completely gone. So that's what you want them to do, because when you really get to the harvesting part, you know, you're gonna have to pick out some of the worms when you go through it. But this will make sure that if you get a majority of the population that comes up to the top to start feeding on it, that the bottom is going to be left more for the harvest. So, you know, I don't really, there's no time, I guess, when I do that. Maybe a month I might check it, and then, you know, usually I'm making sure that the actual bottom part is composed and decomposed enough that I'm going to actually want to use it in my garden, because sometimes it does take a little time to break down, depending on how big the scraps are in there. The bigger the scraps are, the longer it's going to take. So, you know, you can make them a little smaller if you chop them up or you blend them, and that would make it decompose much faster. But it's really not necessary. I'm a very simple gardener, so this is just very simple. It's worked throughout the years. My tomatoes, cucumbers, all my plants love this stuff. So it is so vital for my garden that I just want to share it with you guys. So the other thing that you want to be concerned, that you want to also care for, is every once in a while they do need some type of calcium, and the calcium helps them reproduce. At least that's what I've been told. I don't know, that's like the magic stuff for them right there. But so what I do is I generally just take some egg shells, I rinse them off, and then I kind of crush them up in my hand as best as I can. Some people say to blend them. I mean, I crush them up, but I never find them in there. They seem to decompose, and they help the thrive, you know, for these guys to do. So they do reproduce. So you'll notice the more stuff you put in here, you're going to notice the population's going to explode. So much so that I actually created another bin, and I took a portion of them and I put them into the other bin, and they've already multiplied like crazy. So they're very, very easy to take care of. You know, and as you're harvesting them, when you actually harvest the vermicompost from here, you know, I usually just generally dump them on a big tarp, and then I kind of pick out as many worms as I can. I mean, I can't get every single one of them, but I pick out the majority of the worms out of there, so that so I'm just basically left with the black compost part, and then I use that stuff in my garden everywhere. Even during the season, if it's not particularly composted, I'll actually just take a scoop of it, and if I'm putting it in my growing hole, and I'll just dump it in there, and I'll just take out as many worms as I can before then, and I'll also just dump it in there as well, just like that. So I don't know, I haven't had any problems with any of it. So they like I said, all my tomatoes and plants love it. So I try to get it in there as much as I can for the garden. Well, hopefully this has helped you. If you could, please give us a green thumbs up. Let us know that we're making great videos for you. Also, if you could, please hit that subscribe button down below. Hit the bell so you get notified of any new videos that we do have. Also, we have a website called gardenerthumb.com where we have all tips and tricks out there. I even have a link I'll put in the show notes that helps you out with some vermicomposting as well. Well, as always, I'll see you in the next video.